Okay, so I'm just gonna do a series of short videos about alternatives that we have while the pools are closed. This first one is really just about the shoulder and what we're being careful with as we introduce this stuff. Over decades of coaching swimming and being a swimmer, I have seen repeatedly what happens when people just start to introduce dry land work, which is what swimmers call work that you do out of the pool. It's called dry land if you're a swimmer. And there's a lot of effective things you can do. But when people add this in, they tend to not necessarily do it right, and that's where injuries occur. So this is stuff that you want to introduce slowly, you want to introduce carefully, but it's highly effective. The reason it can be so effective, all of us as triathletes are getting a lot of cardio work from the bike and the run. So it's not really our cardio that suffers so much when we're out of the pool. I mean, we're not biking and running while holding our breath, so you feel it when you get back in the pool. You definitely do. But what's really been lacking is the muscle stimulation that you get from swimming, you don't get from biking and running. So some of this stuff is really to keep those muscles engaged, even if you're not doing a lot of it. It's a good way to remind those muscles and to not just let them sit dormant while the pools are closed. So even if you're not doing that much of it, it still can really help. And honestly, you're probably going to need to start at a place that doesn't feel that hard to make sure that you don't have any residual pain or soreness the next few days after you've done the exercises, to make sure that you're doing them right, and then you build from there. The main injuries that tend to come from swimming and come from dry land are up here in the shoulder joint. Now, to be clear, in swimming, obviously the shoulder gets used a lot, but our prime movers in swimming, the place where you really get the most power, are your pec muscles here, and then your lat muscles back here. So these two muscles are really the powerhouse of swimming, and that's not up here. They attach up into the shoulder joint, but those muscles don't tend to be what cause shoulder pain. What tends to happen in the shoulder joint is the rotator cuff muscles. There are 4 rotator cuff muscles. They are very small muscles. They run over the top of the shoulder here, and then they run back through here. And they are not muscles that are very strong. They're smaller muscles. They are extremely important in how our shoulder moves, but that's not where you're getting the power in swimming. But what tends to happen, and the reason that they often get injured in swimming, is because if you look and you have your arm outstretched like you do when you swim, any movement to my arm up here as I'm rotating like this, and the pitch of my hand just when you swim, the fingertip down, the pinky down here versus the thumb down here, all of this rotation here comes all the way up into the shoulder. So as my thumb is up, my arm here is in a much different position up in my shoulder than it is here. So that bone, your humerus bone here, as it enters into that shoulder joint, any movement in your hand is impacted up in the shoulder joint. And this is especially true of overhead motions, which we do in swimming, and which you see in a lot of the videos, of stretch cords and various things that we're going to talk about, this overhead motion here. And that is where we tend to get a lot of shoulder pain. And it's because of the bone structure in the shoulder, and then the way the arm moves, those muscles, those little rotator cuff muscles, can get pinched in that bone structure, and they can just get if you're not doing it right, you can put a lot of pressure on those really small muscles. So everything that we're going to talk about in terms of what you can do to help your swimming while you're not in the pool, what we are most mindful of is the shoulder joint, and doing things that really strengthen your prime movers, which are this pec and this lat. And those are the things, you can build some great strength for swimming and for those muscles without injuring that rotator cuff muscle. And so we're going to talk about that in some future videos, but that is the main thing to be mindful of when you are introducing new things for swimming that you haven't done before, is to be mindful of this shoulder joint, the pinching along here, and then back here. So that's if you have questions, please email me, but that's it for now.